Hello everyone. In this update, I want to show you a couple of things about Rhino code in Rhino that makes it accessible to editors outside of Rhino. There has been a couple of conversations and stuff like that on the Slack channel, and this is sort of like my attempt to show you that Rhino code is really more than just a code editor inside of Rhino. It's a whole infrastructure of being able to run code inside of Rhino environment with access to Rhino API from a code editor inside of Rhino or outside of Rhino or other endpoints. So this is the case that I want to show you how you can run Rhino scripts in Python or in C# from outside of Rhino in Visual Studio Code or your own sort of like tools that you want to create. I have an instance of Rhino, obviously, the latest Rhino whip running over here. I have sort of like expanded this command history panel at the bottom right side, and I have Visual Studio Code open with 3 different examples. I have 2 different Python examples and a C# example that actually uses a NuGet reference syntax there to reference a REST sharp package that is sort of like used in this script. I'm going to go to Visual Studio Code extensions, and I'm going to search for RhinoCode. You'll notice that there's a new extension for Visual Studio Code that's called RhinoCode. I already have this installed. You can just install it. It's very simple to use, not that big of a deal. There's only one command that it adds to the VS Code at this point that sort of like helps you run code inside of Rhino. So I'm going to go to the command panel and use run in Rhino whip. So that's the command that he adds. I'm going to click on that. It'll give you a prompt with all the instances of Rhino that are running. In this case, I only have one. It tells you which version of Rhino it is, what document you have open, what sort of like view is active, and how long that instance of Rhino has been running for. So it gives you a little bit of information to kind of identify which one of these Rhino instances you want to run your script in. If I click on that, it will sort of select that Rhino, communicates with it, and ask it to run that script inside of Rhino. As you noticed, all that information is actually output to the command prompt here. I'm going to use another example, run a P, that, and this should create a circle and 2 lines in here, just as an example. So this was another script I was running. Running a script in Rhino code this way, it's almost equivalent to how you would run them from the Rhino code editor, this editor, because the underlying infrastructure is basically the same. So I can pass it this C# package, C# script that has a sort of like reference to NuGet, and it would handle installation of that package and sort of like running that script. So I'm going to run this in this example on that version of Rhino, and it would pull the package and would output the JSON from that website. So it kind of communicates with a http://bin.org, the standard website, gets a JSON package and dumps it to the console. As you can see, that happened here. So it actually handled installation of that NuGet package and all that kind of stuff. So I think this is very exciting for everybody that uses Visual Studio Code. On the other hand, the sort of like this whole extension is built on a command line utility that is shipped with Rhino whip from now on, and it's called RhinoCode. All you have to do is to go into Rhino system directory on Windows and add it to your system path, or path on your the environment path in Windows, whichever is user or system, doesn't matter. And the same thing for around in Mac, but it's sitting in the resources bin directory instead, where the yak command line is and all that kind of stuff. Once you have that, you can launch RhinoCode in your command line, and it has a very simple interface right now. I can ask it to list all the running instances of Rhino for me, and it says that's the process ID, that's the pipe that it could communicate with. If there's a document that it has open, it'll show you that information too. And I can also ask it to run a script for me. So the syntax for that would be RhinoCode script help, and it would tell you how you can run that. So all it needs is that RhinoCode, series of options, script, and a path. So I can say RhinoCode script, and I can maybe copy a path of this, paste that here, and ask it to run, and you see that sort of like it runs it in Rhino. So it's basically the same infrastructure. You could use this utility in whatever the editor that you prefer to choose, Or if you want to create like scripts and all that kind of stuff that automate stuff in Rhino, you can ask RhinoCode to run scripts in the Rhino environment. Hopefully we'll provide more functionality over this, but that's basically sort of like the interface with RhinoCode from outside. The interface sort of like has options to help you parse that the output a lot easier. So normally if I say RhinoCode list, this is sort of like a human input, or the shell output that sort of like prints stuff in a tabular format. But if you want it, you can also say I want it in JSON, and sort of like it returns a list of all the running instances of Rhino in JSON that you can parse very easily in your other application or tools and stuff like that, and figure out which one of these do you actually want to use. So I hope you like it. I hope you actually start using your scripts in Visual Studio Code or whatever the editor that you're comfortable with, and sort of like have access to instances of Rhino that are running on your machine. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that you could add the paths of a couple of different things in Rhino. Let me actually open RhinoCode in here. So if you go to RhinoCode directory, there's a couple of paths that you may want to add to your Python interpreter. One is site interop, site Rhino Python that gives you access to GH Python and Rhino script, and also site stubs. So the RhinoCode CPython engine has a stub maker that automatically creates stubs for all the different versions of application that are running. In this case, I only ran this language recently, so it's sort of like there's not a whole lot in here. But you will see a lot of like content in here that makes it possible to have sort of like .NET auto completion in your editor. So you might want to go into your settings. I think it would be your Python analysis extra paths, and you would add those extra paths in here for your for the Python interpreter and sort of like language support that's running in Visual Studio Code to be able to see those external libraries and sort of like provide auto completion and stuff like that over that. Thank you.